Hey everyone, I'm Miles, and I'm going to be doing the voiceover for the animation team's VOD review for Branny. Let's do it! Upon the first viewing with AT, we were all impressed with your choreography, the way you implement perspectives in your animations, and the attempt at storytelling. I say attempt because on our second viewing, we noticed a few issues that can be easily fixed. There is a lack of weight, it's not snappy enough, dialogue breaks the flow of the animation, and camera work isn't bad, but there is one thing that needs fixing there. The camera shake doesn't taper out enough, and as a result, it makes it look clunky. That's literally it, and fixing it isn't too hard.
Hi, I'm Neil from Animation Team, and I'll be showing you how to properly taper camera shakes. Depending on the impact itself, you'll vary the camera shakes, but you can apply most of what I say to almost any other camera shake, just with less frames. So, the first thing I do is make a tween for the camera that's following the action. After that, I'll make the entire tween into keyframes by highlighting the whole layer and pressing F6. Next, I'm going to take the camera and move it off into the direction the combat is going with my mouse. In this case, to the right. Then every other frame, I'll shake the camera less and less. Zooming in while moving also helps. By the end, you should end up with something like this.
Just a tip, camera shakes are a tricky thing. We love it for impacts, but doing it all the time makes you realize that you can't see jack shit. Trust me, we're very guilty of that. The thing about camera shake, it's mainly a cheat to sell impact without using a lot of frames, like for hit stuns. It's mainly to hide the fact that there's barely any animation going on. If you have a lot of animation going on, especially for someone like you who has a lot of rich choreography, it's just a disservice doing it all the time. The weight of the characters is sort of on the floaty side. Check this part where he breaks out and starts swinging his bat. You want to build up and be weighty to sell its, well, weight, but the actual swing of it should be really quick, like 1 to 2 frames long. Check out this animated comparison side by side to see what I mean. We've noticed that you use a lot of motion tweens. Not motion tweens, I mean motion tweens from later versions of Flash. Now, while I get where you would use these, for curve editing and whatnot, but we really recommend using classic tweens instead. It's based off Flash 8's motion tween. You can tween in the same way, make 2 keyframes, right-click the frames in between, and tween. But why we recommend it is because you can do a lot of custom easing by using this pencil and messing around with the shape, so you can get more extreme and complex movements. You can also use a guided arc movements by using motion guides. This works by making a new layer, making it into a guide layer by right-clicking the layer and clicking guide, drawing the guide with a line tool and drag the line and holding control with the line tool to curve it. Then, on a layer below it, drag it so it is indented underneath the guide layer. Make 2 keyframes and paste the symbol on different ends for each of those keyframes and create a tween. Boom. You'll have an easier time with classic tweens and motion tweens, and also get more help that way since most of us use it this way too. Of course, if you're comfortable with what you got going on with motion tweens, feel free to use that. Again, this is just the tip. So, when these 2 characters are fighting, we realized a lot of attention was placed onto your character, but this other character wasn't reacting too much. He had this blank expression constantly, and wasn't reacting to what was going on, even at points where he was supposed to be looking at him, but was actually more looking above him. So, how do we go about fixing that? We recommend taking the time to sprite the face in a program, and also separate them and put them onto a separate layer to change and edit in Flash. Now, like we've mentioned before, we really like the attempt at storytelling. This scrolling section, really frickin' nice, dude. Good job. However, for bits of dialogue like at 29 seconds and 48 seconds, they just walk and break the pacing of the action. Instead of breaking down the animation into chunks of action, dialogue, the pace would be kept and also make the fight a little more interesting if you had some action or motions while they're talking. In fact, you did a good job of it here at around 42 seconds, but only for that one instance, which is a shame. Check out this side-by-side comparison to see how pacing is uninterrupted when the text is going on at the same time. First off, we really want to compliment this perspective turn you did here. It was really nicely done, dude. Good job. We also like how you went about doing scaled tiles to show off perspectives rather than skewing and transforming a texture. So for your scenery, we've noticed how it stands out. There's the foreground, there's buildings, and then there's this big abyssal void, and then there's the background. We'd recommend adding a few more objects into that abyssal area to give it more depth. You want to sell the immersion of the map that you're in, so it makes it look more immersive, to put it redundantly. Maybe a few street lamps, some signs, a couple buildings and stores, something along those lines. While the sounds aren't bad, you could pick much better by using sounds from Zach's sound kit, which you can find a link to in Caius's resource Junkyard. There will be a link in the description for it. The sound mixing could use some work too, since the music really seems to overshadow the sounds there. Just a tip, placing sounds before you animate in a rhythm sort of style really helps, because not only do you pay more attention to your sound design, it really helps pace combat. It really puts into perspective the gaps in your animations if it exists, and lets you visualize the combat a lot better. It might even help put ideas into your head if you hit a wall by placing some sounds out and working the combat around that. Give it a shot and see if it works out for you. This was a very difficult VOD to do, since the animation is pretty good. It took us multiple viewings to write a few notes down before scripting it. Even though we had some issues with it, it doesn't take away from the fact that you have great choreography, good use of perspectives, and the animation of adding context to fight that, while it did break the flow, kept us interested in the animation. You'll see a major difference in your animation so long as you work on your camera work, sound design, backgrounds, and overall pacing. You're already starting at a really high base, and these are just tips for you to keep in mind while you're on your grind. We really can't wait to see what you'll do next. Keep it up! Also submit your VOD reviews! Or, if that isn't your fancy, we started a production on animation tutorials from the ground up. More on that on a later date. Till then.